In this video, we're going to talk about a mix of fiscal and monetary policy, or you might also see this as monetary and fiscal combinations. And what we're going to do first is we're just going to go back and review what fiscal policy is and what it can affect, and then what monetary policy is and what it can affect. And that way we can use a combination of expansionary fiscal or contractionary monetary, for example, to get the desired outcome. And so what I'd like you to do first is just go to a workbook page. It's in your workbook. It's going to be near the end of this unit. So it's going to be right before the unit 5 and 6 study guides and review questions. And you should have a blank chart that says fiscal and monetary policy review. Now I've filled in some of this chart already, and I think it might be helpful to go along as I am and then pause every now and then so you can fill in what I've already filled in. So to begin, monetary policy is just going to be an adjustment of the discount rate, the reserve requirement, or buying and selling bonds, which is going to be open market operations. And fiscal policy is just going to be changing the levels of taxes and government spending. And really quickly, what we're going to want to do if we're going to pursue contractionary monetary policies, we're going to want to decrease aggregate demands. I'm going to fill this in here. And if we're going to pursue expansionary monetary policy, we're going to want to increase aggregate demands. Let's see if I can do this right. Here we go. Conversely, if we've got fiscal policy and we're going to pursue contractionary fiscal policy, I'm again going to want to decrease aggregate demand. And expansionary will be an increase, or I'm going to want to increase aggregate demand. And now in order to pursue a contractionary monetary policy, there are three things that I can do. And so I've filled out the discount rate, the reserve requirement, and something to do with bonds for both of these. Contractionary policy is going to involve an increase in the discount rate, an increase in the reserve requirement, and I'm going to want to sell bonds. Conversely, expansionary monetary policy is going to lead me to decrease the discount rate, decrease the reserve requirement, or I could buy bonds. Fiscal policy is going to be a little bit more straightforward. Fiscal policy involves an increase in taxes. Again, if this is going to be contractionary, I'm going to increase taxes and or I could decrease government spending. And it's going to be just the opposite if I want to pursue expansionary fiscal policy, where I'm going to want to decrease taxes and then increase government spending. Now, just to quickly go through some of these, the effect of the money supply, contractionary and expansionary fiscal policy will not affect the money supply. So I have some of these left blank, or you can write not applicable. Same thing here, monetary policy is not going to affect the budget, and it's not going to affect how we pay for the budget. But the money supply, if we're going to pursue contractionary monetary policy, will fall. We're going to have a decrease in the money supply, and if we pursue expansionary monetary policy, we're going to have an increase in the money supply. The federal budget, if we pursue contractionary fiscal policy, so going back up here, if I have fiscal policy that's contractionary, I'm going to end up with a surplus, or it's going to go towards a surplus. I'll write that. Towards a surplus. And this, if I have expansionary policy, I'm going to go towards a deficit. And how am I going to pay? How am I going to finance this fiscal policy? If I have contractionary fiscal policy, what I can do is I can buy bonds. Or another thing I could do is I could offer tax refunds if I want to get back to a balanced budget. And what I might need to do in order to pay for my expansionary fiscal policy, I might need to sell bonds. So what this question is asking is, how can I pay for the fiscal policy that I've enacted? In this case, I'm going to need to sell bonds. Now that is going to lead to an increase in real interest rates. So I'm going to fill out this box first. This is the crowding out effect, where I have expansionary fiscal policy. That leads to selling bonds, which is going to raise interest rates. So this is going to be crowding out. And I'll make a little note here. The next one, if I move now from right to left, I'm going to have a decrease in interest rates. And then if I have monetary policy, and let me go back up here, if I have expansionary monetary policy, that is going to lead to a decrease in interest rates again. Now, expansionary monetary policy is where we increase the money supply in order to decrease the interest rates. And the opposite of that is going to be contractionary, where I increase the interest rates. So this one of these last questions leads or discusses crowding out, and I want to quickly go through these. If I have contractionary monetary policy, this will lead to a decrease in investment. So I'm going to write a yes here, but I'm going to put a little note. This is by design. This isn't a side effect of the policy. This is the goal of the policy. If I have a decrease in interest rates, which I've got right here, if I have a decrease in interest rates, it will not lead to crowding out. Oh, let me go back. So I'm going to write no for both of these, and I'm going to write yes here because this is crowding out, which we've just made a note of right up here. This last one with economic growth, I'm going to hold off on for now, and I want to go down to some notes that I made that are going to outline what's going to happen when we combine policies. So if you want to do this part in the graph paper in the back of the unit, feel free. But what I've done is I have the 4 combinations of monetary and fiscal policy. This first one is where I have expansionary fiscal and monetary policy. And I want to just quickly make a note of what's going to happen to aggregate demand and what's going to happen to interest rates. And I'll do that for all 4 of these. If I have expansionary policy that's fiscal and then expansionary policy that's monetary, aggregate demand will surely increase. However, I don't know what the effect will be on my interest rates. And you can see that if I go back up here and I find the column where I have my interest rates, which is going to be this one right here, the effect on real and nominal interest rates. If I look at this and if I've got expansionary fiscal policy, I have an increase in interest rates. But if I have expansionary monetary policy, I have a decrease in interest rates. So the net effect is going to be indeterminate. We don't know what's going to happen with interest rates. It depends on the relative strength of the 2 policies. What I have here with a fiscal policy that's contractionary and monetary policy that's contractionary, aggregate demand, again, these will be working together to decrease aggregate demand, so aggregate demand is going to fall. Interest rates, though, are also going to be indeterminate. We're not sure. And then you can see that by going back and noticing that contractionary monetary policy is going to lead to an increase in interest rates, and contractionary fiscal policy, let me get this back, contractionary fiscal policy is going to lead to a decrease in interest rates. So again, we are not sure. Now, this is the part where this can get interesting in terms of our policies towards economic growth. If I have a fiscal policy that's expansionary and a monetary policy that's contractionary, I am not entirely sure what the effect on aggregate demand is going to be. However, I do know what's going to happen to interest rates. Interest rates should rise in this situation, because both of these policies are going to lead to an increase in interest rates, and the opposite is going to happen if I have fiscal contractionary policy and a monetary policy that's going to be expansionary. Aggregate demand, the effect will be indeterminate, but my interest rates should fall. Now, if I'm going to pursue a mixture of these 2 policies, this is the one that might be appealing to me in terms of economic growth. And I want to make a little star of this because if I have a lower interest rate, that means that there might be more investment spending. And more investment spending can lead to more capital, which might lead to a shift in our long-run average supply curve and economic growth. So as I go back up to this, what I want to do to promote economic growth is have lower interest rates. So if you see lower interest rates, this can lead to economic growth. So with this first one, where I have contractionary monetary policy, this should not lead to economic growth. However, when interest rates fall with expansionary policy, this one will. Same thing with contractionary fiscal policy. This could lead to economic growth. And the last one will not because interest rates have gone up because of the crowding out effect. Now, this is maybe the strongest or the best policy that will lead to economic growth, because it's expansionary already and because interest rates are falling, which will lead to more investment.